Thank you for plugging into this Family Life News podcast, streaming issues-driven, family-focused news.
This is Faith Under Fire. Each Thursday on Family Life, we give voice to religious battlegrounds in this nation. I'm your host, Tracy Lynn. With us today, Walt Hare, founder of SexChangeRegret.com. Well, we're going to get to your own experience, but first I wanted to bring up that the Biden administration has lifted the transgender ban for military recruits. What do you think this means for the culture within the military, especially when it comes to combat focus?
It kind of depends on whether the transgender identifying person, male individuals who are identifying as female, whether they are homosexual in their orientation or whether they are heterosexual. If it's just the one who's heterosexual, probably not much of an issue. It would be, in my view, the homosexual identifying transgender that would be more problematic in that they would probably assert their freedom to do what they're doing and cause some other people in the military who are not transgender, who have every right to feel awkward around a homosexual transgender. I can see it becoming very divisive and probably end up with some events where people are being thrown out of the services because they, quote, offended one of these poor saps.
I've heard that LGBT sensitivity trainings that were started under President Obama have been reinstated for federal employees. But how will this Biden executive order impact Christian schools, businesses, and sports?
Listen to me carefully. If you go in and study this, this is the advancement of Marxism in our society. Transgenderism and Marxism are linked because Marxism, by design, is to destroy individuality, destroy the family, and destroy the institution of the church.
You know, it makes me think of the Black Lives Matter movement. While I believe that African American lives matter so much, the particular movement, Black Lives Matter, has some links to Marxism. And I remember hearing someone say, in fact, the 1776 Project, which also President Biden has cut that program, Robert Woodson has said a lot of the problems within the Black community stem from back in the 70s when basically people figured, hey, I can get a welfare check. We no longer need the man in the home. And that started the decay of many minority families.
Yeah, that's Marxism.
Yeah.
Destroy the family. And Black Lives Matter, the people who started that, the three girls, admit that they are trained Marxists. It's not an aside. It is a Marxist-oriented organization, and all three of them are LGBT activists. So it's intended to force people into adopting Marxism by using their activism with Black Lives Matter.
Wow, Walt. Thank you for bringing that out. Back to the whole transgender focus. If you could only name 2 or 3 things, what do you think are the root causes of gender dysphoria?
Well, the root causes that I've run into in working and speaking with literally thousands of people, either on a one-on-one basis or through my email, my website, SexChangeRegret.com, because I've been doing this for 25 years. There's always something that happened to them. Sexual abuse is one of the top things, emotional abuse, and by saying emotional abuse means that the child was either abandoned by a father, ignored by the mother, put in foster care several times. And I found this to be true in 100% of the people that I've worked with. Something happened that caused them to not like who they are. So transgenderism really isn't about assuming a different gender. Transgenderism at its root is about destroying who you really are because you don't like who you are. I know that from my own standpoint. I was sexually abused. So what you want to do is rid yourself of who you are because you were sexually abused.
So there's a trauma behind it all.
Always.
Would you please share your story?
Yeah. My story started 76 years ago. 1944, my grandmother made a purple dress for me because she was a dressmaker. She liked dressing me up. She liked how I looked as a girl much more than she did as a boy. So what we realized by anybody putting a boy in a dress and then affirming them, telling them how cute they looked, what they're doing actually is telling them, and listen to me carefully, this is not casual, you're telling them there's something wrong with them in the gender that God created them to be. So that begins what they call dysphoria, which is nothing more than unhappiness, an indication there's some deep problem. So when Grandma put me in that dress, I started to not like myself as a boy because Grandma only liked me as a girl. So you begin to cultivate this idea that there's something wrong with you and that you're different and you're not like everybody else. And this weighs you down. And then, of course, because my father found out about me wearing the dress, he decided to employ heavy discipline on me with a hardwood floor plank across my butt, which was physical abuse. And then my uncle decided because I was wearing a dress that I was fair game for sexual abuse. So you have these three components of being told in a casual way by putting you in a dress, there's something wrong with you, a boy, so I'll make you a girl, or look like a girl so you're more attractive and more interesting. And as a result of that, you get hit with a hardwood floor plank and sexually abused. So these are the components that make you not want to be who you are. Transgenderism is a self-destructive behavior. You're trying to destroy yourself and adopt an identity that you can never become, because nobody in the history of mankind has ever changed from one gender to the other, biologically, scientifically, or medically. So the whole thing is a farce, and that's why I've had upwards of 350,000 people contact my website looking for information in a 12-month period of time. So pushing back against these transgender ideologies is also pushing back on the Marxist agenda. Karl Marx hated God, hated the church, and wanted to destroy the church and the family and make everyone dependent upon one another.
Wow. And Walt, you lived as a woman for many years.
I identified as a woman after going through all the surgeries. I refuse to say I've lived as a woman because you can't. But yeah, I identified as a woman for 8 years, and I worked for the federal government at FDIC, and I worked for the Postal Service until I had an awakening. I was studying psychology at UC Santa Cruz and came across some good books in the library that began to show me how ridiculous this whole idea of transgenderism is. And that awakening brought me to a new level of understanding that no one ever changes genders. Men who identify as women are insulting women, actually, by saying, women, you're nothing more than a man with a rearranged genitalia and breast implants, which to me is like one of the greatest insults you can ever portray upon a woman.
You make some very good points, Walt. Because of your own journey, you are helping so many other people. What would you have us know about the long-term impact of the hormone replacement and sex reassignment surgery?
Trying to identify in a different gender, taking hormones, having surgery, will elevate your chances of successfully completing suicide by 18 times. So if we're actually able to sit down with them like someone would have done with me and said, oh, okay, well, you were psychologically abused by your grandmother when she put you in a dress. You were emotionally abused by being sexually abused, and you were physically abused by your father. You got 3 forms of abuse on a boy before he's 10 years old. He's going to have problems. And introducing hormones into that young boy and cutting off body parts is not the solution to childhood emotional, sexual, and physical abuse.
Wow. Well, would you speak to the person listening right now who may be struggling in this area? What would you advise him or her to think on and to do next?
I think it's important for that individual to look back at their life and identify what caused them to not like who they are. And that point of what happened. Was it divorce in the family? Were you physically abused? Were you sexually abused, emotionally? What happened? I've had young people tell me that he was in a family of 7 people and he couldn't get anyone's attention, and he decided to identify as a transgender just to get other people in the family to recognize he was even in the family. So sometimes it's more subtle. And we have children now going online, forming these chats about how to become a transgender. So many of the people today are not suffering from gender dysphoria that identify as transgender, suffering from some other physical, emotional, psychological, sexual, even social abuse of some kind.
Walt, what can the church do to be compassionate and truth-telling on the topic of gender and sexuality? You know, everything from chromosomes to pronouns.
Well, I'm a simple guy. You can go to Romans 12:2, and it says, don't conform to the world. As people who are believers, we are challenged every day to follow Jesus Christ. And so if we're adopting these transgender identities, we're not following Christ. We're following the world and the devil, and that's not where we need to be. We need to push back on those things. The church needs to be more strident, I believe, in telling people that these identities are not in Christ. Your gender is not assigned to you. It's innate, and it's equal to your sex at conception. Nothing can change after conception. The rest of that is just pure hogwash. It's locked in. The rest is just folly that people are trying to tell you that you can change your gender, sex. Not possible.
I really appreciate your time, and I appreciate your spunk and just telling it like it is. Are there any other ministries that you're working with or that you recommend? Because I don't know how many hours you have in the day, but I'm sure you're a very busy man.
Yeah, there are a lot of them, I guess, around. I don't know of many of them. I know there's a movie out by American Family Association that people should look at. It's called In His Image.movie. You can go on and get it free online. And it tells you all the biblical underpinnings, and it's very well done. A lot of pastors are involved in the movie, and there's 3 subjects that talk about how to come out of these different behaviors. So we're all trying to pitch in and help. It's kind of a David and Goliath thing, but we just keep doing what we can.
Excellent. And where can people find more about you or the work that you're doing to help people?
SexChangeRegret.com, and my books, Trans Life Survivors or Paper Genders. They'll be very informative to anybody who's interested in the topic and learning about what happens and what the danger is of introducing these ideologies into our society.
That's Walt Hare with SexChangeRegret.com. I'm Tracy Lynn, Family Life News.